There is a particular quality to the silence that descends after midnight, a softness that wraps around the world like a blanket woven from starlight and shadow. And in this hushed hour, if you listen carefully, you can hear the breathing of mothers all across the earth, rising and falling in rhythm with their babies, a symphony of exhalation and inhalation that has played since the beginning of human time. Perhaps you are one of them now, sitting in the half-dark with a child nestled against your chest, their small weight pressing into you like an anchor, like a promise, like a question you're still learning how to answer. And if so, then let this story find you like a hand reaching through the darkness, like a voice that says without words, "You are seen, you are known, you are not walking this path alone." Breathe with me now, just for a moment, feeling the air move in through your nose and out through your mouth, slow as honey, steady as tides. And as you breathe, let yourself soften just a little. Let your jaw unclench and your shoulders drop, and your body remember that it knows how to carry weight without breaking, that you are stronger than you think, more capable than you've been told, wiser than all the voices that have tried to convince you otherwise. This is a story about remembering, about finding your way back to a knowing that lives not in your thoughts, but in your flesh, in the way your arms curve instinctively around your baby without deciding to, in the way your heartbeat slows when you hold them close, in the way your body produces exactly what they need at exactly the moment they need it. As if you and this small person are still connected by invisible threads that were never truly cut, only stretched and transformed into something even more mysterious than the umbilical cord that once tethered you together. Let me tell you about a woman who stood where you might be standing now, suspended between exhaustion and exhilaration, between who she was before and who she is becoming, swaying gently in a darkened room with a newborn in her arms and a question echoing through her mind like a prayer, like a plea. Am I doing this right? Will I survive this? Is my baby broken, or am I? And in asking these questions, in allowing herself to doubt and wonder and feel the full weight of her uncertainty, she was already beginning to wake up to something that would take years to fully understand, but that began in that precise moment. The understanding that both the question and the answer lived inside her, that she had always known what to do, that her body carried wisdom older than any book or expert or well-meaning advice from people who had never held this particular baby, this particular beating heart, this particular miracle of breath and bone and becoming. Listen now to how her journey unfolded, and as you listen, feel how your own body begins to relax, how your eyelids grow heavy as river stones, how the boundaries between her story and yours start to blur and soften until you can't quite tell where she ends and you begin. Because in truth, all mothers are one mother, all babies are one baby. All love is the same love wearing different faces, speaking different languages, moving through different bodies, but always, always the same at its root. The fierce and tender impulse to protect, to nurture, to offer your very body as shelter against a world that can be harsh and cold and unforgiving. She was born in winter, this woman, born into a time when the old ways had been forgotten and replaced with rules that contradicted everything the body knows, born to parents who loved her with every fiber of their being, but who had been taught that love must be measured and rationed and controlled, lest it spoil the child, lest it create dependence, lest it produce a weak and clingy human unable to stand alone. So when she cried in the night, and she cried often, this sensitive infant whose nervous system registered every sound and shadow as potential danger, the door was closed between her and comfort, and she was left to exhaust herself into a silence that was not peace, but surrender, not calm, but defeat. Her parents believed they were doing the right thing, believed they were teaching her resilience, believed that to respond to her cries would damage her somehow, would create needs that shouldn't exist, would prevent her from learning the independence that every child must learn. What they didn't know, what no one had told them, was that babies don't learn to sleep by being left alone. They learn to give up calling. They learn to conserve energy when it becomes clear no one is coming. They learn that the world is not safe and their needs don't matter, and they are fundamentally alone. And this learning settles into the body like sediment at the bottom of a river, invisible but heavy, shaping everything that comes after. The years flowed past like water, carrying her from infancy through childhood and into adolescence, and always she carried this unnamed weight, this sense of something missing that she couldn't articulate, couldn't even fully feel except as a kind of background ache, a fear of darkness that never entirely left, an insomnia that kept her pacing through the night hours, an anxiety that colored everything with the faint tint of danger, of not quite rightness, of being slightly out of sync with a world that seemed to come more naturally to others. She didn't connect any of this to those early nights, those hours of crying alone, those moments when her infant self learned the terrible lesson that her needs were too much, that comfort wasn't coming, that she had to manage everything on her own. How could she connect them? She had no memory of that time, no conscious knowledge of what had happened, only a body that remembered what the mind had forgotten, a nervous system that still carried the imprint of those nights like rings in a tree trunk, like scars beneath the skin, invisible but present, always present. Then came the day she discovered she was pregnant, and suddenly everything began to shift and crack and reform like ice breaking up in spring, like earth splitting to let new growth through, and she found herself moving through the world with a kind of heightened awareness, noticing things she had never noticed before, the way other mothers held their babies, the advice that seemed to flow from every direction like water from a broken dam, the 1,000 small ways the culture tried to separate mother and baby from the moment of birth onward. She didn't think much about sleep at first, assumed in the vague way we all assume that her body would know what to do, that it would be natural and instinctive, that babies simply slept when they were tired and woke when they needed something. And in this assumption, she was both right and terribly wrong, because her body did know. Her instincts were sound, but she would have to learn to trust them against a chorus of voices telling her to do otherwise, to ignore what she felt, to follow methods and schedules and rules invented by people who had never held her baby, never looked into her baby's eyes, never felt the way her heart seemed to expand beyond the boundaries of her chest when this small person looked at her with complete trust and absolute need. When her daughter arrived, slipping from the warm ocean of her womb into the bright, cold air, something happened that she couldn't have predicted and wouldn't have believed if someone had told her beforehand. Every cell in her body woke up and began to sing. Not with joy exactly, though there was joy, but with recognition, with certainty, with a kind of ancient knowing that felt like coming home after a long exile. The baby was placed on her chest, still slick and wrinkled and perfect in the way only newborns are perfect. And the woman's arms closed around this small body with a strength that surprised her, with a conviction that came from somewhere deeper than thought, deeper than reason, deeper than anything she could name or explain. And then the voices began, gentle at first but insistent, well-meaning but undermining, the voices of nurses and doctors and visitors who all said the same thing in slightly different ways. Let me take her. You need to rest. She'll be fine in the nursery. You should sleep while you can. You can't hold her all the time. You need to put her down. You're going to spoil her if you keep this up. But something in the woman's chest was saying no, was saying it louder than any external voice, was saying it with such absolute certainty that she surprised herself by refusing, by holding tighter, by declaring out loud what her body already knew. She stays with me. There were forms to sign, eyebrows to raise, subtle suggestions that she was being difficult or overprotective or naive, that the professionals knew better, that she should trust them rather than herself. But she didn't let go, couldn't let go, and in that holding, in that refusal to be separated from her baby who had been inside her for 9 months and who was now supposed to be placed in a plastic container under fluorescent lights as if the connection had been severed when the cord was cut. In that refusal, something inside her began to open like a flower opening to sunlight, like a door she didn't know existed swinging slowly on its hinges to reveal rooms she had never seen, filled with knowledge she had always possessed but had been taught to doubt. In the days that followed, as she learned to nurse her daughter, as she held her skin to skin for hours at a time, as she felt the weight of this small body against her chest rise and fall with each breath, the woman began to search for understanding, began to look for answers to questions she was only just learning to ask. She needed to know. Was she crazy to feel this pull toward closeness, this physical discomfort when they were separated, even briefly, this certainty that her baby needed to be held almost constantly? Or was there some other framework, some other way of understanding infant needs that contradicted the dominant messages she'd been receiving her entire life? And what she discovered in her searching, in the books and research papers and writings of people who had devoted their lives to studying infant development, both broke her heart wide open and set her free in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. She learned that human babies are born profoundly unfinished, with brains that are only a quarter developed, needing years of external support to complete the work that other mammals finish before birth. And during this long period of vulnerability, their survival depends entirely on one thing: continuous closeness to a caregiver who can regulate their nervous system, help them make sense of overwhelming sensations, teach them through thousands of repeated experiences that the world is safe, that needs get met, that they are not alone. She learned that when babies cry at night, they are not being manipulative or difficult or spoiled. They are doing exactly what millions of years of evolution designed them to do, calling out to ensure their mother is nearby, still breathing, still able to protect them from dangers that their ancient brain believes still lurk in every shadow, even though the physical world has changed and there are no longer predators waiting in the dark. She learned that all the advice about sleep training, about putting babies down, about not responding too quickly or holding too much, was not based on any scientific understanding of how babies develop, but rather on the opinions of people in the past who believed that children needed to have their wills broken early, needed to learn that the world wouldn't accommodate their needs, needed to be shaped and controlled rather than nurtured and responded to. These ideas had spread through culture like a virus, had been passed down through generations, had become so normalized that they now seemed like common sense, like obvious truth, when in fact they were the opposite. They were a profound misunderstanding of what babies need, what mothers are designed to provide, what healthy development actually looks like. But there was more, and this was perhaps the most disturbing part of what she uncovered, that these child-rearing practices had been deliberately encouraged and spread by forces that understood something crucial, that if you want to control a population, you must first sever the bonds that connect them, and the most effective place to start is at the beginning, with the mother-baby relationship. She learned how indigenous cultures around the world had always centered this relationship, had always kept babies close day and night, had always responded immediately to cries, had always seen children as sacred beings to be honored rather than problems to be solved, and how these practices were specifically targeted for destruction by colonizing powers who recognized that people raised in connection, raised in kinship, raised with their needs met and their spirits intact, could not be easily controlled, could not be convinced to abandon their communities and work in factories and serve empires that valued productivity over humanity. This knowledge landed in her body like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples outward that touched everything, that changed the shape of every shore. And as the ripples spread, she found herself thinking about her own infancy, those nights of crying alone, the fear and abandonment that had marked her without her conscious knowledge, the ways she had learned to see her own needs as shameful, as too much, as something to be hidden and managed rather than expressed and met. And she thought about her daughter sleeping now against her chest, breath soft as butterfly wings, tiny fist curled against her skin, and she made a vow that felt simple and revolutionary at once. This ends here. This pattern stops with me. I will not pass this wound to another generation. I will break the cycle even if it costs me everything, even if everyone thinks I'm wrong, even if I have to walk this path entirely alone. But making that vow and living it, she quickly discovered, were two entirely different things, because even as she held her daughter close, even as she nursed her through the night and slept beside her and responded to every cry, there were voices everywhere, from her pediatrician who had received less than an hour of education about normal infant sleep, from her own mother who worried she was making life too hard, from friends and strangers and books and websites and social media accounts with millions of followers, all saying the same thing in slightly different ways. You're spoiling her. You're creating bad habits. You need to teach her to sleep. You can't keep this up forever. You're going to regret it. You need to think about yourself too. Your needs matter. You can't be a good mother if you're exhausted. You have to set boundaries. You have to let her cry. It won't hurt her. It's actually good for her. She needs to learn independence. You're being overprotective. You're too attached. You need to let go. And late at night, in those darkest hours when her daughter woke for the 4th or 5th time, when exhaustion felt like a physical weight pressing down on her entire body, when she couldn't remember the last time she'd slept for more than 2 hours straight, the woman would feel doubt creeping in like fog, would feel herself wondering if maybe they were right, if maybe she was making a terrible mistake, if maybe her instincts were wrong and everyone else knew better. This is where so many mothers find themselves trapped, caught in the excruciating space between body wisdom and cultural conditioning, between what feels right and what they've been told is right, between the fierce pull toward their baby and the equally fierce pressure to separate, to create distance, to prioritize their own needs and the baby's alleged need for independence over the primal urge to keep them close, to respond, to comfort, to love in the most fundamental physical way that love can be expressed. It was in this place of uncertainty and exhaustion that she most needed to hear what I'm whispering to you now across the darkness, what I wish someone had whispered to her, what I hope will settle into your bones like warmth seeping through cold soil. You are not doing it wrong. Your baby is not broken. Your instincts are not failed or misguided or too intense. What you feel is not weakness, but wisdom, ancient and reliable as the turning of the earth, older than any book or expert or cultural norm that tries to override what your body already knows. Feel those words now. Let them land in your chest like seeds. Like small stones you can build a foundation on, like raindrops on parched earth, and say them again if you need to, slowly letting each syllable be its own small affirmation. I am not doing it wrong. My baby is not broken. My instincts are trustworthy. As weeks turned into months, the woman began to notice things that no one had mentioned in any of the books she'd read or advice she'd received, small miracles that unfolded naturally when she stopped fighting against what her body wanted to do and instead allowed herself to follow its lead. She noticed that when her daughter slept beside her, their breathing synchronized perfectly, falling into rhythm like two instruments playing the same song, like two hearts beating in parallel, like two streams flowing together into one river. She noticed that nursing at night, rather than depleting her as she'd expected, actually flooded her system with a kind of peaceful drowsiness, a warmth that spread through her body like honey, like liquid gold, making the night wakings feel less like interruptions and more like sacred pauses, quiet moments of connection suspended outside normal time. She would later learn the names of the hormones responsible for this feeling: oxytocin and prolactin, nature's gift to nursing mothers, designed to make nighttime care feel manageable, even pleasurable. But in the moment, she only knew that something in her body was supporting her, was helping her do what needed to be done, was making it possible to function on less consolidated sleep than she'd thought humanly possible. She noticed too that on the rare occasions when she tried to follow conventional advice, when she attempted to put her daughter in a crib in another room, or let her cry for even a few minutes, her own body revolted with such intensity it frightened her. Her heart would race, her stomach would clench, her hands would shake, and every cell in her being would scream, "Pick her up, go to her, something is wrong, she needs you." This wasn't anxiety or irrationality or inability to cope, she began to understand, but rather her nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, alerting her to her baby's distress, activating the caregiving response that has kept human infants alive for hundreds of thousands of years. Perhaps most surprising of all, she discovered that she wasn't falling apart the way everyone had warned she would, wasn't losing her mind, or her sense of self, or her ability to function. Because once she stopped fighting against the night wakings and instead accepted them as normal, as natural, as something to respond to rather than eliminate, they became easier to navigate, less overwhelming, less like an emergency, and more like a rhythm she could learn to move with rather than against. She learned to rest during the day when her daughter napped, not always sleeping but lying down, closing her eyes, breathing deeply, allowing her nervous system to settle without needing to fully surrender to unconsciousness. She learned that rest comes in many forms, that the kind of conscious relaxation she practiced while her baby slept on her chest was remarkably restorative, that her body could adapt to fragmented sleep as long as she wasn't also carrying the burden of constant guilt and worry and second-guessing. She began paying attention to what she consumed, not just food, though that mattered, but everything. The news that activated her anxiety, the social media that made her feel inadequate, the conversations with people who drained rather than nourished her, the expectations she was carrying that weren't even her own, but had been placed on her by a culture that valued productivity over presence, achievement over attunement, doing over being. She started protecting her energy like the precious resource it was, learning to say no even when it felt uncomfortable, even when people were disappointed, even when she worried about being seen as difficult or ungrateful or selfish. And she began seeking out nature with a kind of desperate hunger, strapping her daughter to her chest and walking through parks and along rivers and into whatever green spaces she could find, feeling something in her body shift and settle when she was outside, when she could feel sun on her face and wind in her hair and see sky stretching endlessly above her, reminding her that she was part of something larger, that her rhythms were meant to align with the rhythms of the natural world, not the artificial schedules imposed by modern life. The more she did these things, the more she listened to her body, trusted her instincts, protected her energy, sought connection with nature and with other mothers walking the same path, the more she realized that the catastrophic collapse everyone had predicted wasn't happening. She was changing, yes, being transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. But she wasn't breaking. She was discovering reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed, finding capabilities that had been dormant until called forth by necessity, learning that she could be simultaneously soft and strong, vulnerable and powerful, that these weren't opposites, but different expressions of the same essential force, like water that can be gentle rain or raging flood depending on what's needed. And she found her people, the other mothers who became her lifeline, her mirror, her proof that she wasn't alone or crazy or making a terrible mistake. Women she met in parks and online groups and coffee shops, women with babies strapped to their bodies and exhaustion written in the shadows under their eyes. But also something else, something harder to name. A kind of fierceness, a determination, a refusal to apologize for choosing closeness over convenience, for prioritizing their baby's needs over cultural expectations, for trusting themselves even when everyone else questioned them. These women told each other stories that felt like absolution, like permission, like finally being allowed to exhale after holding your breath for months. Stories of babies who nursed all night until they were 3 or 4, and then one day simply stopped. Stories of children who slept in their parents' bed for years, and then transitioned peacefully to their own room when they were ready. Stories of mothers who had been told they were ruining their children, and whose children were now the most secure, confident, independent people you could imagine. One woman shared how her son hadn't slept through the night until he was 4. How everyone had told her she was creating a dependency problem. How they'd warned that he would never be able to self-soothe or sleep alone. And how now, at 8, he was the most emotionally regulated child in his class, the one other kids came to when they were upset, the one who could name his feelings and ask for what he needed and handle disappointment with remarkable grace, all because he'd learned in those early years that his needs mattered, that reaching out brought comfort, that the world was fundamentally safe even when it was challenging. Another described how she used to believe she had to make her baby fit into her pre-baby life, had to maintain all her old routines and social commitments and sense of self until she realized that her baby was her life now, that this was a season for slowing down and being present, that one day she would miss this intensity, would long for the weight of her infant in her arms, would wish she could return to this time with less anxiety and more appreciation for how fleeting and precious it was. These stories were like water in a desert, like finding your tribe after years of feeling like an outsider, like discovering that the thing you thought made you weird or wrong or inadequate is actually the thing that makes you wise, that connects you to an ancient lineage of women who have always known that babies need to be held, that closeness creates security, that responding to cries builds trust rather than dependence. They gave the woman permission, though she shouldn't have needed permission, though the fact that she did was part of the problem, to trust what her body already knew, to believe that what she was doing was not just adequate, but beautiful, not just sufficient, but sacred, not just getting by, but actively building the foundation for her daughter's entire life. There's a word for this foundation, though it's been misunderstood and weaponized, and used to shame mothers who are doing exactly what their babies need, and the word is attachment. But what it really means is this: a secure base from which to explore the world, a safe harbor to return to when things get overwhelming, a deep, unshakable knowing in the bones that you are loved and valued and worthy of care, not because of what you achieve or how you perform, but simply because you exist, simply because you are. You build this attachment not through perfect parenting or never making mistakes or following rigid rules, but through small, repeated moments of connection, through responding when your baby cries, through being there when they need you, through showing them over and over and over again in 1,000 tiny ways that they can count on you, that their needs matter, that reaching out brings comfort, that love is real and reliable and unconditional. And here's what decades of research has proven: what should be taught to every new parent, but somehow gets buried beneath advice about sleep schedules and feeding routines. Babies who are responded to consistently, who are held when they need holding, who are allowed to be dependent for as long as they need to be. These babies grow into the most independent children, the most confident adolescents, the most securely attached adults, not despite being held so much, but because of it. Because they learned something fundamental that allows them to move through the world with courage and resilience and the capacity for deep connection. They learn that reaching out brings comfort, that needs get met, that people can be trusted, that the world is fundamentally safe even when it's difficult, and armed with that foundational security, they can take risks and handle setbacks and form healthy relationships and navigate challenges and grow into their fullest selves without spending all their energy trying to meet needs that were never met in infancy, without carrying wounds that should have been allowed to heal from the very beginning. This is what the woman was giving her daughter in those nighttime hours, in those moments that felt endless and exhausting and sometimes overwhelming. In those times when she wondered if she had the strength to continue, she was giving her the gift of security, the foundation of trust, the deep cellular knowledge that she mattered, that her needs were important, that love was something she could count on. And she was giving something to herself as well, though she wouldn't fully understand this until much later, wouldn't see the pattern until enough time had passed to gain perspective. Every time she responded to her daughter's cry, she was also responding to the cries of her own infant self. The baby who had been left alone in the dark, who had learned that no one was coming, who had carried that wound for decades without even knowing it was there, without understanding how it shaped every relationship, every decision, every moment of her life. This is what gets lost in all the practical advice about sleep training and feeding schedules and getting your body back. That in caring for your baby, you are also caring for yourself. That in meeting their needs, you are meeting your own unmet needs. That in choosing to parent differently than you were parented, you are not just changing your child's future, but healing your own past. Not just raising a baby, but raising yourself, becoming who you were always meant to be before the world taught you that your needs were too much, that your feelings were inconvenient, that you should be smaller and quieter and more manageable than you naturally were. This is deep work, sacred work, the kind of healing that happens not in therapy sessions or through talking, but in the body. Through the lived experience of offering the care you wish you had received, through the repeated choice to show up even when it's hard, to respond even when you're exhausted, to be present even when part of you wants to run away and never look back. There were still hard nights when her daughter wouldn't settle no matter what she tried, when she woke every hour on the hour, when the woman felt so tired she thought she might simply dissolve into the darkness and cease to exist, might evaporate like morning dew, might drift away like smoke and never return. On one of these nights, sitting in the rocking chair at 3 a.m. with her daughter finally asleep against her chest, she let herself cry. Soft, quiet tears that ran down her face and fell onto her baby's head, dampening the fine dark hair that smelled like milk and warmth and something indefinable that could only be described as home. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to the darkness, to the silence, to whatever force might be listening. "I don't know if I'm strong enough. I don't know if I'll make it through. I don't know how much longer I can keep going like this." And then, as if in answer, she felt it. The solid weight of her daughter's body against hers, the rise and fall of breath, the tiny hand curled against her skin, the warmth that seemed to radiate from this small being and seep into her own body, filling spaces she didn't know were empty, lighting corners that had been dark for so long she'd forgotten they existed. And she thought about all the mothers throughout history who had done this, who had held their babies through the night without electricity or running water or modern medicine, who had done it through wars and famines and migrations, who had done it alone sometimes in circumstances far more difficult than hers, and who had survived, who had continued, who had done what needed to be done, because that's what mothers do. That's what love does. That's what it means to be the keeper of someone else's heartbeat. If they could do it, she thought, then perhaps she could too. Perhaps the path was real and solid and trustworthy. Perhaps she wasn't walking into the abyss, but following a road that millions of women had walked before her, their footprints worn so deep into the earth that the way was clear if she just had the courage to keep putting one foot in front of the other. In that moment, something shifted, subtle as the first hint of dawn, but no less real. And though the exhaustion didn't disappear, it was still there, heavy and undeniable. It changed quality somehow, became something she could carry because she understood she wasn't carrying it alone, because she could feel in some mysterious way the presence of all those other mothers, the ones who came before and the ones who were awake right now at this very moment, holding their babies, doing the same work, walking the same path. Across the city, across the country, across the world, millions of other women were awake too, were nursing their babies and rocking them and whispering to them, were doing the invisible, unpaid, uncelebrated work that keeps the human race alive, that builds the foundation for every future relationship and achievement and moment of joy these children will experience. She couldn't see them, but she could sense them, could feel them like a web of connection spanning the globe, invisible threads linking woman to woman, mother to mother, heart to heart. And through those threads flowed something she could only describe as love, vast and impersonal and yet utterly intimate at the same time, the love that moves through all mothers, that connects them across time and space and difference, that makes them one body, one breath, one long, unbroken chain of care stretching back to the very beginning. She sent her own love back along those threads, imagining it reaching the other women who were struggling right now, who were doubting themselves, who were wondering if they could continue. and she imagined receiving their love in return, feeling it flow into her like warm water, like liquid light, giving her the strength to sit here a little longer, to hold her baby a little longer, to trust herself a little longer. "You are not alone," they seem to whisper. "We are here with you. We have always been here. This is what we do. This is who we are. We are the ones who hold the world together in the night while everyone else sleeps. We are the ones who know that love is not something you feel, but something you do. Again and again and again, whether you feel like it or not, whether anyone notices or not, whether you're tired or not. Slowly, gradually, in ways so subtle she barely noticed them happening, things began to shift and change and rearrange themselves into new patterns. Her daughter started sleeping for longer stretches, not every night, but more nights than not perfectly, but better. And the woman realized that this change hadn't come from any method or technique or intervention, but simply from time, from development, from her daughter's nervous system maturing at its own perfect pace, from her body learning what it needed to learn when it was ready to learn it, just as she'd always known it would if she could just be patient enough, trusting enough, willing enough to let development unfold naturally rather than trying to force it according to some external timeline. The woman herself was changing too, though she didn't notice it happening. Though the transformation was so gradual, it was like watching seasons change, impossible to pinpoint the exact moment when winter becomes spring. She learned to rest without guilt, to accept help without shame, to ask for what she needed without feeling like a burden or a failure. She learned that taking care of herself was not separate from taking care of her baby, but intricately connected, that she couldn't pour from an empty cup, that self-care in early motherhood wasn't bubble baths and spa days, but eating nourishing food and going outside and resting when her baby rested, and protecting herself from people and situations that drained her energy without giving anything back. She learned to trust her body in ways she never had before, to honor its signals, to believe that the discomfort she felt when separated from her daughter was information worth listening to rather than inconvenience to overcome. She learned that there were many ways to be a good mother, that the path that felt right to her, even if it was different from everyone else's, even if it was countercultural, even if it made her seem strange or overprotective or unable to cope, that path was valid, was valuable, was worth defending. She learned to say, "This is what works for us," instead of apologizing, to say, "We're doing it differently," instead of explaining, to say, "I trust myself," instead of seeking validation from people who didn't understand, who hadn't walked this path, who were operating from different values and different beliefs about what children need to thrive. By the time her daughter reached her 3rd birthday, something remarkable had happened, though it hadn't felt remarkable in the unfolding, though it had simply felt like the most natural progression imaginable. The woman looked at her child, no longer a baby, but a small person with her own thoughts and preferences and personality, and saw someone who was deeply, fundamentally secure in ways that were hard to articulate but impossible to miss. Her daughter played independently for hours, completely absorbed in her own imagination, building elaborate worlds with whatever materials she could find. She made friends easily wherever they went, sharing her toys without being prompted, showing empathy when other children cried, navigating social complexities with a grace that seemed beyond her years. She handled transitions well, adapted to new situations without meltdowns, showed remarkable resilience when things didn't go her way, and people would comment on it, sometimes with surprise, sometimes with what seemed almost like envy. "She's so independent," they would say, "so confident, so well-adjusted, you're so lucky." And the woman would smile and nod and not say what she was thinking, which was, "It's not luck, it's love, it's consistency, it's responding to needs instead of ignoring them. It's trusting that children become independent when they're developmentally ready rather than when we force them to be. It's understanding that the foundation of independence is security, and security comes from knowing that someone will always be there when you need them, always respond when you call, always hold you when you're overwhelmed, always see you and know you and love you exactly as you are." She noticed too that her daughter still came to her bed sometimes, not every night, but on hard nights, nights when she'd had a bad dream or wasn't feeling well or just needed to feel close. And the woman welcomed her without hesitation, without worry about creating bad habits or preventing independence, because she understood now in her bones what she'd once only known intellectually, that needing comfort is not weakness, that seeking connection is not pathology, that all humans, regardless of age, need to be held sometimes, need to feel safe, need to be reminded that they're not alone in this vast and sometimes frightening world. Her daughter would come and climb into bed and curl against her mother's side, and within minutes her breathing would slow and deepen, and she would fall into the kind of deep, peaceful sleep that only comes when you feel completely safe. And the woman would lie there in the darkness, feeling the weight of her child against her, and thinking about how many nights she'd done this, how many hours she'd spent holding and rocking and soothing, and she would feel not resentment or exhaustion, but gratitude, deep and profound, that she'd had the courage to trust herself, to follow her instincts, to choose this path even when it was hard, even when everyone questioned her, even when she questioned herself. One evening, after her daughter had fallen asleep, the woman sat by the window watching the moon rise through the trees, a silver disk climbing slowly through the darkening sky, and she thought about the baby she had been, the infant who had cried alone in the dark. Instead of the usual unconscious flinching away from that pain, instead of the familiar tightening in her chest, she felt something entirely different wash through her, a wave of compassion so vast it seemed to fill the entire room. A tenderness so profound it brought tears to her eyes, a love for that infant self that was no different from the love she felt for her daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room. She closed her eyes and sent that love backward through time, imagining it finding that crying baby, imagining it wrapping around her like arms, like warmth, like the comfort she had needed so desperately and never received. And she whispered into the darkness, "I see you. I see you now. I understand what happened to you. And you were not too much. You were exactly right. Your needs were real and valid and important. You deserve to be held. You deserve to be comforted. You deserve to know that someone would always come when you called. I'm so sorry no one came," she continued, her voice barely audible. I'm so sorry you had to learn to stop asking. I'm so sorry you spent all those years believing you were alone, but I'm here now. I'm here, and I will never leave you the way you were left. I will hold you the way you should have been held. I will answer your cries the way they should have been answered. And though I cannot change what happened, I can change what happens next. I can break the pattern. I can be for my daughter what no one was for you. And in doing that, in choosing differently, I am also healing you. I am also giving you what you needed. I am also making it right, even though it can never truly be made right, even though the wound will always be there, a scar that aches sometimes, a place where the bone healed crooked, but healed nonetheless, stronger for having been broken and mended. She felt something shift inside her then, felt something that had been frozen for decades begin to thaw, felt a knot she'd been carrying since infancy begin to loosen and unravel, and she understood with a clarity that felt like revelation, like lightning illuminating a landscape she'd been walking through blind. That in caring for her daughter, in responding to her cries, in keeping her close and meeting her needs and trusting her instincts, even when everyone told her she was wrong, she had been healing herself as much as she was raising her child. Every time she picked up her daughter, she was also picking up her infant self. Every time she offered comfort, she was also receiving it. Every time she chose connection over control, presence over productivity, love over fear, she was rewriting not just the future but the past, was changing not just her daughter's story but her own story, was reclaiming something that had been stolen and restoring something that had been broken. This is the secret they don't tell you, the truth that gets buried beneath all the practical advice about sleep schedules and feeding charts and developmental milestones, the understanding that would transform everything if more mothers knew it, that motherhood is not just about raising a child, but about raising yourself, about becoming who you were always meant to be before the world taught you to be smaller and quieter and more accommodating, before you learned to ignore your own needs and doubt your own instincts and defer to external authorities who claim to know better than your own body what your baby needed. The work you're doing in the darkness is not just biological necessity or parental duty, but spiritual practice, healing journey, revolutionary act, the reclamation of something that was taken from us generation after generation, the remembering of wisdom that was deliberately forgotten, the restoration of bonds that were systematically severed, because someone understood that connected people are harder to control, that mothers who trust themselves are dangerous to systems built on obedience and compliance and the suppression of human needs. So if you're listening to this now, if you're awake in the small hours with a baby in your arms, if you're exhausted and doubting yourself and wondering if you can continue, if you're questioning whether you're doing it right or ruining everything or making mistakes you can never undo, then hear this and let it sink deep into your bones where truth lives. You are not doing it wrong. Your baby is not broken. Your instincts are not failed or misguided or too intense. What you feel is wisdom. What you're doing is important. What you're building is a foundation that will support your child for their entire life. Every time you respond to your baby's cry, you are teaching them that the world is a place where needs get met, where reaching out brings comfort, where they are valued and cherished and worthy of care. Every time you hold them when they're upset, you are showing them how to regulate emotion, how to move from distress to calm, how to handle overwhelm. Every time you keep them close, you are building their capacity for secure attachment, which is the foundation for every healthy relationship they will ever have. And you are teaching yourself these things too, relearning them, remembering them, reclaiming them from the place where they were buried under years of conditioning and cultural messages that told you to ignore your body, override your instincts, trust experts over yourself. Every time you follow your instincts, you are strengthening your connection to your own inner wisdom. Every time you trust yourself, you are rebuilding the self-trust that may have been damaged in your own early years. Every time you choose to do it differently than it was done to you, you are healing not just your child, but yourself, not just the future, but the past, not just one relationship, but a whole lineage of relationships stretching back through time. You are part of an unbroken chain of mothers, even though the chain was nearly broken. Even though for generations, mothers were told to ignore their instincts and follow rules that went against everything the body knows, even though the wisdom was driven underground and nearly lost. But it wasn't lost. It couldn't be lost because it lives in the body, in the way milk comes when the baby needs it, in the way your arms curve without thinking, in the way you wake seconds before your baby cries, in the way your heart rate slows when you hold them close. This wisdom cannot be destroyed by culture or conditioning or expert advice because it is older than culture, deeper than conditioning, wiser than any expert, and it is yours. It has always been yours. It is your birthright as a mother, as a woman, as a human being connected to millions of years of mammalian evolution, billions of years of life finding ways to care for itself, to nurture itself, to ensure the continuation of itself through bonds of love that are stronger than any force that tries to sever them. So rest now if you can. Let your eyes close. Let your body grow heavy as stones sinking through water, heavy as roots growing deep into earth, heavy as anything that knows how to surrender to gravity, to support, to being held by forces larger than yourself. Feel your baby's breath matching your breath. Feel your heartbeat synchronizing with their heartbeat. Feel the boundaries between you softening and blurring until you can't quite tell where you end and they begin. And know that this is not pathological enmeshment or unhealthy fusion, but natural connection, the way things are meant to be in the beginning, the foundation from which all healthy separation eventually grows. You cannot spoil a baby with too much love. You cannot damage them by responding too quickly. You cannot create unhealthy dependence by meeting their needs. These are lies. These are fears planted by systems that benefit from separation, from the early severing of bonds, from mothers who doubt themselves, and babies who learn not to ask for what they need. The truth is simpler and more beautiful than all the complicated methods and schedules and rules. Babies need to be held. They need to be responded to. They need to be close to their mothers or primary caregivers, especially in the first 3 years when their brains are building the neural pathways that will shape their entire lives, when they're learning at a fundamental cellular level whether the world is safe or dangerous, whether needs get met or ignored. whether reaching out brings comfort or leads to abandonment. And mothers need to hold their babies, need to respond to them, need to keep them close, not just because the babies need it, but because the mothers need it too, because something in the body knows that this is right. This is what you were made for. This is how the system is designed to work when it's allowed to work naturally without interference from cultural norms that prioritize productivity over relationship, independence over connection, individual achievement over collective care. Let yourself trust that system now. Trust your body, trust your baby, trust the dance between you that is older than language, older than conscious thought, older than any advice or method or expert opinion. Your body knows what your baby needs because your body made your baby, grew them cell by cell from nothing, transformed your own substance into their substance, and that connection doesn't end when the umbilical cord is cut. It continues, it persists, it expresses itself in the milk that adjusts its composition based on your baby's needs, in the way you wake before they cry, in the way your nervous system can read their nervous system and know what they need before they know themselves. Trust that, lean into that, let it guide you even when, especially when, it contradicts what you've been told, what you've read, what everyone around you seems to believe. You are not alone in this trust, even when it feels like you are, even when everyone you know seems to be following different rules, using different methods, believing different things about what babies need. There are mothers all over the world who are doing what you're doing, who are keeping their babies close, who are responding to cries, who are nursing through the night, who are sleeping beside their children, who are trusting their instincts over cultural norms. And these mothers are connected to you even if you can't see them, even if you've never met them, even if you live in a place where you're the only one you know who's doing it this way. They are your sisters, your tribe, your people, and the bond between you is real and strong and unbreakable, woven from shared experience, from common understanding, from the knowledge that you are doing something important and valuable and sacred, even if the culture doesn't recognize it, doesn't celebrate it, doesn't even seem to see it. And beyond these mothers who are alive now, there are all the mothers who came before, the ones who walked this path when it was the only path, when there were no books or experts or alternative methods, when mothers simply did what came naturally because there was no other option, and their children survived and thrived and grew into adults who were capable of love and connection and community because they had learned in their earliest days that the world was safe, that needs got met, that they belonged, that they mattered. These mothers are with you too, these ancestors whose names you'll never know, but whose legacy you carry in your body, in your instincts, in your capacity to love a small person so fiercely you would give anything, do anything, be anything they needed you to be. Feel them now, all these mothers. Feel their presence like a warm wind at your back, like hands supporting you, like voices whispering encouragement across the darkness. You can do this. You are doing this. You are doing it beautifully even when it doesn't feel beautiful, even when you're tired and doubting yourself and wondering if you're strong enough. You are strong enough. You have always been strong enough. And the strength you need is not the kind that powers through or pushes down or pretends everything is fine. It's the kind that softens, that yields, that allows itself to be changed by love, that opens itself to vulnerability and need, and the terrifying, beautiful intimacy of being absolutely essential to another human being's survival and well-being. This strength is not about being hard, but about being resilient like water, like trees that bend in storms but don't break. Like anything that knows how to adapt and flex and find new shapes without losing its essential nature. You are learning this strength now, building it day by day, night by night, moment by moment. Each time you respond to your baby, even when you're exhausted, each time you trust yourself, even when you're doubting, each time you choose connection, even when separation would be easier, even when everyone is telling you that separation is what your baby needs, what you need, what's best for everyone. They're wrong, not because they're bad people or don't care, but because they've been shaped by the same culture that shaped you, the same messages about independence and self-sufficiency and not being too needy, the same lies about what babies need and what mothers should do. And they're passing those messages on not with malice, but with a genuine belief that they're helping, that they're offering wisdom, that they know better than you do what's right for your baby. But they don't know better. They can't know better because they're not your baby's mother. You are. You're the one who carried this child inside your body, who felt them move and hiccup and respond to your voice, who labored to bring them into the world, who produces milk designed specifically for them that changes composition based on their needs. You're the one whose nervous system is attuned to theirs, whose heartbeat they recognize, whose smell and voice and touch they know better than anything else in the world. You're the expert on your baby. You're the authority. You're the one who knows. And everything else, all the books and advice and methods and expert opinions should be filtered through that knowledge, should be measured against what you feel in your body, should be accepted only if it resonates with your deepest instincts about what your particular baby needs. And here's what your baby needs, what all babies need, what human infants have needed since humans first emerged as a species. They need closeness, they need responsiveness, they need to be held and fed and comforted. They need to know that they're not alone, that someone is there, that their needs matter and will be met. They don't need to be trained or taught or scheduled or controlled. They need to be loved, which means they need to be seen and known and responded to. They need their cues to be read and their signals to be answered and their distress to be soothed. This is not complicated. It's not advanced parenting technique. It's not something that requires expert knowledge or special training. It's basic mammalian caregiving. It's what mothers have done forever. It's what your body already knows how to do if you let it, if you trust it, if you stop trying to override it with methods designed by people who don't understand infant biology, don't trust mothers, don't believe that babies and parents are designed to be together. So let yourself do what feels right, what feels natural, what your body is telling you to do. Pick up your baby when they cry, hold them when they need holding, sleep beside them if that's what allows everyone to rest. Nurse them through the night if that's what they need and what works for you. Carry them during the day if they're happier being held. Trust that you are not spoiling them or creating bad habits or preventing their development. You are supporting their development. You are giving them exactly what they need to build a healthy nervous system, to form secure attachments, to learn how to regulate emotions and handle stress and form healthy relationships and move through the world with confidence and resilience. And trust that you are also giving something to yourself, that in meeting your baby's needs, you are meeting your own unmet needs, that in offering them the responsive care you may not have received, you are healing something in yourself, that in choosing to parent from instinct rather than from rules, you are reclaiming your own power, your own wisdom, your own capacity to know what's right without being told by external authorities. This is not selfish. This is not self-indulgent. This is not making it about you when it should be about your baby. This is understanding that you and your baby are still connected, that your well-being affects their well-being, that you cannot give them what they need if you're running on empty, if you're depleted, if you're fighting against your own instincts and needs in order to follow rules that don't serve either of you. As the night deepens around you, as the world grows quieter and darker and more still, let yourself sink deeper into rest. Let your breathing slow and your muscles soften and your mind quiet its endless churning of thoughts and worries and questions. You don't need to figure everything out tonight. Don't need to have all the answers. Don't need to know for certain that you're doing everything right. You only need to be here now, in this moment, with your baby, offering whatever they need, trusting that tomorrow you'll wake up and do it again, and the day after that, and the day after that, and slowly, gradually, almost imperceptibly, both you and your baby will change and grow and adapt, and what feels impossible now will become manageable. What feels overwhelming now will become routine. What feels endless now will reveal itself to be temporary, a season that passes like all seasons pass, leaving you changed but not broken, exhausted but not destroyed, transformed into someone you didn't know you could be. One day, maybe not tomorrow or next week or even next month, but one day your baby will sleep through the night, will transition to their own bed, will not need you in quite the same way they need you now. And when that day comes, you will feel relief, yes, because you'll finally get to sleep for more than a few hours straight, finally have your body back to yourself, finally not be needed quite so intensely every hour of every day and night. But you will also feel something else, something unexpected, grief, nostalgia, a longing for this time, even though it was so hard, even though you spent so many nights wondering if you could continue, even though there were moments when you wanted nothing more than to be alone, to sleep, to have just a few hours when you weren't responsible for keeping another human being alive. You will miss the weight of them sleeping on your chest, will miss the soft sounds they made while nursing, will miss the way they fit perfectly in the curve of your arm, will miss the warmth and the closeness and the intimacy of those dark hours when it was just the two of you existing outside of time, suspended in a bubble of connection that felt both eternal and impossibly fragile. You will look back on these nights and think, I'm so glad I did it that way. I'm so glad I trusted myself. I'm so glad I didn't listen to all the voices telling me to do it differently, because these nights were sacred, these nights were holy, these nights were some of the most important of my entire life, even though they felt so ordinary, so difficult, so endless at the time. So try to hold both truths at once if you can, that this is hard and that this is precious, that you want it to end and that you'll miss it when it does, that you're exhausted and that you're also experiencing something profound, something that is changing you in ways you won't fully understand for years. Try to be present for the difficulty without letting it consume you, to acknowledge the exhaustion without letting it define you, to feel the overwhelm without letting it convince you that you're failing. You're not failing. You're not even close to failing. You're succeeding at the most difficult and important work there is. You're showing up every single day and night, even when you don't want to, even when you're tired, even when you're doubting yourself. And that showing up, that commitment, that willingness to keep going even when it's hard. That's what love looks like. Not the romantic, easy love of movies and songs, but the real love, the daily love. The love that chooses and chooses and chooses again. The love that says, I will be here for you. I will meet your needs. I will not abandon you even when it costs me everything to stay. This love is what changes the world, what heals trauma, what breaks cycles of pain and abandonment and neglect. This love is what your baby will carry with them for their entire life, what will shape every relationship they have, every choice they make, every moment of connection or vulnerability or courage. This love is what will allow them to be fully human, fully themselves, fully alive in a world that often tries to make us less than we are, smaller than we could be, more manageable than we were meant to be. And this love is also what's healing you, what's making you whole, what's teaching you that you are worthy of love not because of what you do or achieve, but simply because you exist, simply because you are a living, breathing human being who deserves to be seen and known and cared for just as much as your baby does. Let yourself receive that now. Let yourself be held by the same love you're offering. Let yourself rest in the knowledge that you are doing enough, being enough, loving enough, that you don't have to be perfect or have all the answers or never make mistakes, that you only have to keep showing up, keep trying, keep trusting yourself even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Let yourself feel the presence of all the mothers who are with you, the ones who are awake right now, the ones who came before, the ones who will come after, and let their strength flow into you. Let their love support you. Let their faith in you help you find faith in yourself when yours is faltering. Close your eyes now if they're not already closed. Feel the weight of your eyelids, heavy as petals, soft as snow, and imagine yourself sinking down through layers of worry and doubt and fear, sinking down past all the noise and advice and conflicting opinions, sinking down into a deeper place where truth lives, where wisdom waits, where you know without thinking what you know, where your body speaks a language older than words. Listen to that body now. Feel what it's telling you. Trust what it knows, and let that trust carry you into whatever sleep might come, or into the gentle waking rest that is sometimes just as restorative, just as necessary. Your baby is safe. You are safe. The night is holding both of you in its dark embrace, and morning will come as it always comes, bringing light and movement and all the tasks of the day. But for now, you can rest, can let yourself be soft and vulnerable and open, can allow yourself to receive the same tenderness you offer your baby. You are doing sacred work. You are walking a sacred path. You are part of something larger than yourself, older than culture, deeper than any system or method or expert opinion. You are a mother, which means you are a keeper of life, a holder of heartbeats, a vessel through which love flows into the world. And that is enough. That has always been enough. That will always be enough. Sleep now if you can, dear mother. Sleep and know that you are held, you are supported, you are loved, that tomorrow you will wake and begin again. And the day after that, and the day after that, and slowly the days will turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, and the months into years. And this child sleeping in your arms will grow and change and become more themselves, and you will grow and change and become more yourself, and the bond between you that is being forged right now in these dark hours will remain, will endure, will be the foundation upon which everything else is built. Rest now in that knowing, rest in that trust, rest in the certainty that you are exactly what your baby needs, that your instincts are trustworthy, that you are not broken and neither are they, that what you're doing in the darkness is not just survival, but creation, not just endurance, but transformation, not just getting through, but building something beautiful and strong and true that will last long after these nights are over, long after your baby is grown, long after you yourself have become one of the ancestors, one of the mothers who came before, one of the voices whispering across time. You did well. You did so well. You were brave and strong and loving, and because of you, the chain was not broken, the wisdom was not lost, the love continued, the healing happened, the world changed. One baby at a time, one night at a time, one mother trusting herself when everyone told her not to, one mother choosing love over fear, connection over control, presence over productivity, again and again and again, until it became the new pattern, the new way, the path back home to something we should never have left but did, and are now slowly, carefully, tenderly, finding our way back to together. Sleep now, beloved mother. Sleep and dream of a world where all babies are held, where all mothers are supported, where the work you do in darkness is honored in daylight, where trust comes easily because it was learned early, where love is the foundation rather than the exception, where connection is celebrated rather than feared. Dream of your child growing strong and confident and secure, rooted in the knowledge that they matter, that they belong, that they are loved beyond measure. Dream of yourself whole and healed and trusting, no longer carrying wounds you didn't know you had, no longer second-guessing every instinct, no longer believing you are too much or not enough. Dream of the mothers who will come after you, who will walk this path more easily because you walked it first, who will trust themselves more quickly because you showed them it was possible, who will receive the gift you are giving now, the gift of choosing differently, of breaking cycles, of healing what was broken and restoring what was lost. And when you wake, whether in an hour or in minutes, whether to your baby's cry or to the dawn, you will still be here, still holding, still loving, still doing the most important work there is, and that will be enough. You will be enough. You have always been enough. Now rest, dear one. Rest and let the night hold you. Rest and let love do its work. Rest and trust that all will be well, that all is well, that you are doing beautifully, perfectly, exactly what you were meant to do. Rest now. Rest.